Here we go. Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. I am joined here by Colin, Caleb, and Chris, the three C's. Um, and we're talking about Deadhouse Gates today. So let's. Oh, let me turn the volume down here. Okay. All right. So I think I thought we would start with our first impressions, overall thoughts. We'll just go around maybe clockwise. So we'll start with Chris. What did you think?
Yeah. So, where to start? Uh, for me, this was a better, stronger read for me than Gardens of the Moon. There were characters in Gardens I did like following a little more. So it did take me a little bit of time with certain characters. I'm sure when we get to characters, we can discuss that. But for the overall, this was a very emotional experience, especially towards the end with a few particular characters. I think it had a lot of there's a lot of desperation. It was hard to come up for breath in this book over Gardens of the Moon. I think there was a lot of quieter parts to Gardens where you were able to catch your breath. This was just like bam, 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 movement after movement, with a little bit of a slower start for me. But all in all, I think um, Deadhouse Gates was awesome. I loved it. It was very emotional. There's parts I'm confused on still, but maybe those get answered in later books.
Yeah, absolutely. Caleb?
Yeah, I am conflicted on this book, to be honest, because I think in a lot of ways it's much better than Gardens of the Moon, but it's also incredibly exhausting. When I got to the end of the book, I was just like, oh, finally. And that's good. I say that in the best possible sense. So I think Erikson's writing is stronger. I think the way he does character and world building is a little better too. On a sheer enjoyment level, I actually think I liked Gardens of the Moon more. And we can talk about the nuances of that, but yeah, I'm conflicted. I really feel like I need to read 3 more books and get a bit more of this arc to kind of come back to Deadhouse Gates and tell you how I feel about it.
Yeah. I've heard this is a one that benefits a lot from a reread for sure. So I
I
get
get
I get that. Colin?
I think similarly, I think to Christopher, this book felt to me like I felt like the premise I was able to grasp a little bit better. Um, like in my review on my channel, I said that Gardens of the Moon kind of felt like Christmas morning when I was just running around to like all the different presents and like getting really excited and I'd see this shiny thing over here and put this down and go over there, and then I'd see another shiny thing. And it was really exciting, and like the novelty of like how this was all being portrayed to me, I think was very just like it worked for me. But I also was pretty lost. And then I felt like Deadhouse Gates, I was more prepared for Erikson's style, if that makes sense. I was looking for his ways of foreshadowing. I was paying attention to things that I figured out mattered later in Gardens of the Moon. So I felt more comfortable going into this. I wasn't like intimidated a little bit like I was with Gardens of the Moon. I just was like, all right, this is going to be wild and wacky, and I'm not going to know what's going on, but I'm cool with it. So let's see what happens. And it was super emotionally like taxing to read this book. Um, Yet couldn't put it down. So there's something to be said about the ability to like have, and it wasn't just for shock value either. I never felt that way personally, at least. Like it felt all very believable to me, but very emotionally draining, but moving. So I enjoyed it, although it hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree there. I think I felt similarly to you guys. It's definitely a lot more emotionally draining than Gardens. Um, really different from Gardens too, because this felt a little more like a linear story, more like a D&D quest, like especially with Callum. He's a lot of traveling and whatnot. So it was cool, but like you guys or most of you guys, I think I enjoyed Gardens of the Moon a little more as well. So maybe it was some of the characters. I don't know. Maybe But yeah, definitely heavy with the emotions. So let's just see who we got here. Oh snap! This is today. Yep.
It sure is.
Hi,
What's
everybody.
up? Hey, hello, Chadia. Daniel Gwynn. Hello. Jared, what's up?
Hey, Jared.
Hey, Jared.
Hello. Deadhouse Gates is a lot more like the other Malazan books than Guards of the Moon. Oh,
Okay,
so
there we go.
now we know. It's good to know.
I think what Colin, you touched on this. I think going into Deadhouse, we were a little better prepared. I think for Erikson's style. I think when we got into Gardens, and this is my first book because Gardens was a reread for me, and going into Deadhouse, we were still able to have that preparation of kind of his style. I just felt like I could pinpoint. I mean, I could understand characters a little more. I felt like the character. I didn't feel as confused, I think, with Guardians. I felt like there was a little more of a linear movement with the characters in Deadhouse over Gardens. But there was a lot of, I think, character-wise, though, there were more memorable characters in Gardens. I mean, Amanda Rake, of course, and, the crazy puppet guy who was, what was his name? Helock, or yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of, like, I think more memorable characters in this, but what I guess I was surprised is on how many characters did cross over to this book, because I was led to believe that everybody was new in this book. So that was a big surprise for me.
Yeah, I felt the same, exactly the same. All right. So I was thinking, oh no, go ahead.
Oh, there's just one thought on Erikson's prose in general. I definitely agree that I think kind of reading Gardens of the Moon and kind of having an expectation of how Erikson was going to write helped. But I also think he kind of improved in the way he wrote character and wrote world building. Because in Gardens of the Moon, I just felt like we got nothing. We got names, and that was basically it. Whereas, like, here, we got a little tinge. Like, I remember when the Red Blades were introduced, we got 3 sentences briefly describing who the Red Blades were. I was like, okay, great. So I think it was a little easier to read, partly because we knew what to expect, and partly because Erikson did take just a smidgen of time to kind of explain the world.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed. So I was thinking we could do this by plot line or like by characters. So starting with Fiddler, Crocus, Apsalar, that whole thing. Well, let me ask you guys, who was the most memorable plot line for you, or your favorite characters in this one? Chris?
Honestly, it was a character that wasn't even a POV, and that was Coltaine. Or I think he didn't even have a lot of lines because we were following more of Dukier, right? Is that how you pronounce that name? Yeah. So we were following his kind of point of view of the whole thing, the whole traveling across the desert with these refugees constantly, the attacks. I mean, that was kind of, for me, that was the part that was just like, I couldn't come up for air. We're in this desperate need of provisions because we're in the desert, so there's that added element of desert, which I love, because we don't get a lot of, I don't think in fantasy we get a lot of like desert scenarios. It's usually a lot of like Western European style things with forests and and all that. So I appreciate the different type of, first of all, I appreciate the environment, and I think that's why I like Deadhouse Gates, because it was such a unique experience to that. So yeah, Coltrane was actually kind of my favorite, the whole House of Chains movement, and then of course that very tragic ending, and you're just like, oh my god, this was terrible, but at the same time it gave you that emotional response that you look for when you read a book. But I mean, of course I love Fiddler too, so the whole those were some of my favorites, of course, too. Kalam, or I loved the whole I love the ship moment too, because again, I'm a I like nautical fantasy as well. So the whole going out to sea portions of Kalam's storyline were also some of my favorites.
Nice. Caleb?
Yeah, I would say individual characters I was the most interested in would be Mappo and Ikariam. I was very intrigued by their plot. I think probably my big critique of the book is I wish we had a lot more of it. But I think my overall storyline, I agree with Chris. I think the Chain of Dogs arc is my favorite, most cathartic part of the book.
Chain of Dogs, yep. Do occur in Coltaine. Yeah, Colin?
Yeah, I think my favorite plot line for sure was I say Diker because that's what the audiobook says. I don't know. There's obviously going to be some not pronouncing these the same. So Diker and Coltaine was like some of the most riveting fantasy plotline that I've read in a long time. I think it was because of the way it was written through the eyes of Diker. They weren't necessarily my favorite characters, I don't think. Although Coltaine just, I don't know if it was like because he was being portrayed through somebody else's eyes, he seemed like larger than life type of thing. There was definitely some of that going on for me, but like, I think I don't know. Diker was one of my favorite characters for sure, and Kalam I think were probably my two favorites overall. But I think like just watching that whole chain of dogs and the battles and it was just that was incredible to me. I loved every second of everything that we were doing with Coltaine's army.
Yeah. So a lot of people love the Chain of Dogs.
How about you, Usman?
For me, so I was quickly invested in Felisin's story. That I kind of wanted to see where that went more than anything. Yeah, but you know, it was heartbreaking, but like Caleb said, you know, I like books that hurt me in a sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Felisin for sure. And then I think like the Chain of Dogs was great. I enjoyed that too. It was very reminiscent of the Black Company, very, very reminiscent of the Black Company. So, you know, all you guys that love the Chain of Dogs, I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy the Black Company because it was very much like that.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I never considered that, but now that you say that,
yeah. And you know, I think I might have enjoyed this book a lot less if it wasn't for all the resources online available to help you understand this stuff, especially with the Chain of Dogs, because all the battle scenes for me were kind of hard to get a grasp on. I mean, there are just so many factions, and they're all just, you know,
yeah, all
doing
the
different things.
and all that.
Yeah, yeah. So if it wasn't for like the videos, I think there's a YouTube channel called Graceless Passion where he makes videos about the battles in detail and like shows you visuals for it, how everything went down. That helped me immensely. So if it wasn't for that, you know, things like that, I probably would have enjoyed this book a lot less. Yeah.
I mean, I was less frustratingly confused in this book than I was in Gardens, where I'm like, I don't, I'm one of those people that I have no problem. It doesn't take me out of the story. I have no problem using glossaries or the persona at the end of the book. And that's set up so brilliantly and so clear to understand, and it helps me okay, what faction or what group is this person in, and because he organizes his characters by group, and I appreciate that. I it doesn't take me out of the story. In fact, it helps me, it enriches me, and it helps me get into it more, knowing just that little basic information that's put in the glossary. And I that's why I love glossaries at the end of the book, because I think they're just very helpful for me. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not often that I utilize a glossary, but for this series, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I don't always need to use it. There are books you don't really need to. You can follow along, but I think with Malazan, it's been very helpful.
Well, I think to Usman's point too, and something like the glossaries don't really benefit or help us with is the battles.
Right.
Particularly that first battle. I mean, there was so much going on. It really was hard to wrap your head around. Like I read the chapter, did not really comprehend it at all. Watched the video that Sorav recommended in the Discord, and then read the chapter again. So which is probably why his book took me so long to read. But I think part of the good and bad of this series is the online community kind of dedicated to making sense of everything, which is great because it's way more immersive and like it feels like an experience reading with people. But it is a bit more challenging just trying to parse out what is happening on the page.
Yeah, resources have been, that's the good thing about this series. Because of its popularity and of its complexities, you have so much resource.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what Bob said in the chat, I didn't really do a lot of self-seeking of things because I was worried that I was going to get spoiled on things. And I know, like, just for example, like they leave the, Erikson leaves the breadcrumbs that we can figure out who Colin Bad and Coltaine are, and I didn't pick up on that in Gardens of the Moon. And if I would have had that spoiled for me by some wiki or something, like I would have been super bummed because that hit me hard. Like I was like, whoa, okay. Like I did not pick up on that. I'm sure he like gave me what I needed to pick up on that. And then obviously people showed me like where he pointed it out and where it was obvious. But I was so just like mesmerized by what was happening in Gardens of the Moon that I was not picking up on that type of stuff. And there's probably a lot of it in Deadhouse Gates that I missed. And there's still a ton of this book that is very vague and I don't understand, but I still feel like I understood more of it. I think because I understood the general premise of what Felisin was trying to do. And I think this one was just a lot more of how it was affecting other people, but then also the whirlwind was happening. So like that was a whole thing we haven't even touched on yet, which was like possibly the main underlying plot of this whole thing. So that was wild, that whole Shaikh, and there were so many different parties involved in that as well. From like Kalam to there was just that affected a lot of people as well. So
yeah, and I think that's probably another one of the book's strengths is I feel like Gardens of the Moon, everyone's plots were very disconnected until they just kind of crashed together. I felt like everyone's story in some way or another was related to what I agree like the Chain of Dogs / Whirlwind plot is like the main thrust of the book. So I do feel like it was a bit more cohesive in that sense. Whereas, because I think especially the middle of Gardens of the Moon was a little meandery as Erikson was trying to position everything for the ending.
We had a lot more of a journey. We just had that general journey story, I felt like, in Deadhouse Gates, which I always look for in fantasy. I'm like one of those, in a sense, it was almost in a sense like one of those old 90s fantasies where you just get that journey story, to the end of where you need to get to go. And I appreciated that a lot more in Deadhouse than I don't think we, like you said, Caleb, it was a little more misjointed in Gardens of the Moon. Still enjoyed it, still enjoyed the characters. I think that's what Gardens was. And I think Deadhouse too is more of a character-driven story. I mean, we do invest in these characters. The world itself is a character on its own. The Whirlwind, as Colin mentioned, that's another character. All these like it and just other portions that you can consider characterization just come together really well, I think, in this book.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that like this book is so much longer than Gardens of the Moon. I mean, like it's 300 pages longer, I think. But I don't really feel like there was anything that could have been cut. I mean, like there was a lot, and there was definitely kind of like a slow burn to some of the plot lines. But I feel like all of it paid off in the most exhausting, painful ways, typically. But 'cause, like even the Chain of Dogs, because like once I would start a chapter, and, like Duker or whatever his name is came on the page, I was like, oh, here we go again. But the catharsis at the end of the Chain of Dogs arc is so intense, and we got that because Erikson took so long, showing us the pain of the journey.
Yeah, and the pain of getting through one chapter. Their chapters are so long.
I read every chapter. It was like an hour and a half. I was like, oh my god.
And that's what I was saying, where you can't come up for a break because it's like, oh, you go into Dukier, and then now you're going into Mappo and Ikrium, and I'm just like, oh my god, I can't. Yeah.
A lot of plot lines. So this I understand. I didn't like the Chain of Dogs at all. I like Kalam, Habrik, Felisin, and Mappo. So yeah, I understand that. I get it.
I think probably I certainly understand this. Something like the Chain of Dogs is not enjoyable because it was exhausting and painful. Even I enjoyed it, and I thought it was painful. And it also, I don't know anything else moving on, but it also feels like it might be pretty inconsequential to the rest of the story. I mean, everyone dies at the end of the Chain of Dogs.
Yeah. I kind of thought that too, and I don't know if that was just the intent of like the hardships of battle and the hardships of this war. I don't feel like it was like, I'm going to kill off a character just for the sake of character. The character death, I think Erikson handles like very fluidly. I think the characters that die make sense. What was the one that just like randomly died though? I think Culp, who got like buried under extra rats or something. I'm just like, you're like waiting for him to come out, and I'm like, nope, he's gone.
that was unexpected. Yeah.
We'll get
to play devil's advocate a bit to what you just said, Caleb, because I had a little bit of a different feeling to the end of the Chain of Dogs. I actually felt that when I, obviously the terrible scene where the arrow, that to me, it was like kind of symbolic of like really bad times to come because of how poorly that was managed by, like, it felt like the beginning of some horrible management by the Malazan Empire, because we see obviously this completely incompetent group of people at Aaron who were like 500 yards or feet away from like making this journey worthwhile, although there was tons of casualties, and they did not have the balls, for lack of a better phrase, to open their gates for this dude that like was probably at this point a futile effort, but Coltaine had decided he was going to do this, and he freaking did it. There's a lot of loss, and he had to like literally watch as he was being just mutilated, and then could have been saved and didn't get saved. And that felt to me like, okay, time. And I think that Diker was kind of feeling that too. Like, you guys are complete wusses. Do you see what this man has done? Can you even comprehend what this man has done? You're 500 yards away from saving him, and you won't leave this because you're scared. Like, and that was a dude that was like in power. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think we saw how, and that's scary. Like, Diker was like, I think, realizing just quite how bad things were getting under Lysine's rule. That was kind of my take on the ending of that.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying like it was bad and like it feels pointless in general. I think there's a ton of great world building stuff in it, like everything you just said. The Malazan Empire obviously showing how kind of incompetent it can be at higher levels, and then also just the sense of betrayal you get. I'm a Coltaine stan through and through, and I think seeing him get done dirty at the end and seeing Duker get done dirty at the end had such an emotional impact. I'm just saying, because that everyone who was relevant in that arc is dead, I could see how someone could think that like the Chain of Dogs arc is pointless, because I think in our Discord, someone said something like, "Yeah, you could actually just skip the Chain of the Dog arc." I think that's an outlier opinion, but
Yeah.
I can see how it seems like it's not going to add up. But I also feel like there's a reincarnation element to the overarching plot that has not been explored just yet. So because there's that whole thing with the crows at the end.
Yeah, with Coltaine and Duiker.
Mhm.
So I have a bunch of comments to get to. Let me just get through these. So I think now Felisin story is one that impacted me most in retrospect. The Chain of Dogs got me most emotional. Yeah. I mean, this book was, the tone of this book was vastly different. I don't recall a lot of the tragic moments in Gardens of the Moon, but this book was like all tragedy. If you think about it, it was
I
a
feel like
tragedy
in terms of like
in a good way.
I mean,
yeah, I feel like
if you lived at the end of this, it was good ending.
in terms of like sheer emotional impact, I don't feel like Gardens of the Moon had like anything close to as tragic as this. I think maybe Tattersail's death in Gardens of the Moon was the saddest thing that happened, but we know she's been reincarnated. I agree that like tonally, it's very different from Gardens of the Moon. Gardens of the Moon felt more like I think I used the phrase black metal fantasy or heavy metal fantasy in describing Gardens of the Moon. This feels grimdark. I mean, like right off the bat, when Bodden like saws that old lady's head off with chains, from the very get-go, this had a very different tone and was going to be a very different story.
Yeah. And if someone said, the person who said that the rest of the books are a lot more like Deadhouse Gates, then that makes Gardens of the Moon just an epic prologue to this
I
series.
was gonna say,
Yeah.
it's almost like a prologue then. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only battle I had any confusion in was the first one, personally. It was a very chaotic chapter. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that was the only one where I had to go back and reread it, and like I felt like the other battle videos were like helpful for visualizing, but the first battle in particular, I just had a hard time wrapping my mind around.
Yeah, they did get a little easier each time.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Saying hello. Hey Laura.
Hey.
Hey, Laura.
And now leaving.
Oh, now leaving. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't know Laura read the book.
What's the resource go to at least book 6? The very first thing in Gardens of the Moon after the opening words was foreshadowing. Okay. Yeah, see, somebody mentioned this as well, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't connect. I don't even recall it.
I mean, there's no way I was gonna like that. That's like one of those why the reread would be so valuable type of moments, because there is just a 0% chance I was gonna pick up on that in the beginning of Gardens of the Moon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nobody's looking for it at that moment.
And again, not to keep referencing our Discord that you guys should join if you haven't yet. But someone says like the best part of reading Malazan is reading it again.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I did link the Discord in the description for everybody, so you can easily check that out if you want to. Going into the books as blind as possible is much recommended. Some fans hype or hint at things coming too much, which could alter an experience.
Yeah, I heard there were I'm the same way. I heard there was a little bit of like hints about Mappo and Ikarium, and I was trying to just avoid them altogether. I noticed the companionship, the camaraderie between the two characters. I heard it really picks up in later books from the little brief things I heard. So, but I didn't catch really there. I guess there's some big hype as to them being like some of the best two companions things, but it just didn't catch it. But this is one of the it was one of the plot lines I may have been least invested in at this point, but I am interested in what they do with the characters. Maybe they'll grow on me eventually, but
Yeah, same. It seems really interesting. Not enough context right now to really get a invested in it too much, but I will say that seems like an epic friendship, like the
Oh my
greatest
God,
friendship you've ever seen.
yeah. yeah, I will say that they definitely have a connection. Usman, you mentioned, I think you were the only one of us who mentioned Felisin.
Felisin, yeah.
Do you want to discuss just your general thoughts on
Okay.
that?
Man. So, I mean, right from the prologue, you kind of you feel bad for her. She's you know she's going to go through a lot, and then when they got to that city, what is it, Skull Cup? They got to Skull Cup, and you see what's been transpiring with her and Heberick and Bodden. It's pretty heartbreaking, you know. You don't see it play out. You just see they've been there for a while now, and this is what has been happening for a while. So reading that was tough, and I understand, like, when I hear a lot of people say they hate Felisin, you know, she's so frustrating and all this stuff. I understand it, but very quickly, like, I felt that way at the very beginning, but very quickly I realized, like, wow, you know, most of this isn't really her fault. Like, she's what, 15 years old, you know, and been thrust into this situation, and I had a lot of sympathy for her. So I don't I don't want to go too deep into her storyline. It hits a little too close to home, but yeah, I sympathize with her, and I just, a lot of times, you know, I wanted her to either, like, to persevere and, like, get through this, or to just be put out of her misery, because she goes through a lot, and you really see how broken she is near the end. And um yeah, so, you know, she is the one that sticks with me the most. um but yeah, I didn't hate her. I didn't I may have been frustrated with her, or a little irritated with her at times. It's understandable, but I didn't flat out hate her. That's my take.
I mean, I'll go on that. I'm honestly the same way. I didn't dislike her. There are definitely some frustrating parts for her. First of all, we got to remember she's a 15-year-old girl, and I think a lot of people put her, because she was an very adult situation, that we always age her up a little bit. When you're in your mind, you're just like, you got to remember she's 15 years old. You know, she's going through crap and hell and all that from her own family member, you know, somebody you think you would be able to trust. I don't know the whole dynamics of their whole family between them and what's his name from the first book, their brother. I think it's very interesting for her to, the first instinct for her was to survive. She knew who could probably keep her alive the most. Two B names, Brennan, I think, or what's his name?
Bennett.
Bennett, yeah, Bennett. You know, she knew she could, and maybe she at first was like, didn't consider him a chance for hope or anything like that, because she was probably passed around unintent, you know, without her leave and all that. So, but she knew where to go. And I think what the problem is, I think people lay all the blame on her throughout this journey, and quite honestly, her companions are just kind of toxic as well. I didn't find Bodden and what's his name, the wizard, yeah, Henry, thank you. Trying to bring up my notes at the same time, but they were pretty kind of toxic with her as well too. And so I think there's just there's this very complex, I think she's very complex, and it's hard to dislike her, I think, for me anyway. I'm kind of the same with you, Usman. I was very sympathetic. I mean, she's just been, it's tough, and you kind of do what you need to do to survive, and I think it is an instinct to essentially use people to get, to try to live. If it helps other people along the way, she probably didn't care. She was just about, her survival and trying to get through a really tough situation. And I think the guys with her were the same way too, but we lay all the blame on her because we are following her point of view. I think, and she had honestly, she had one of the better redeeming qualities at the end, where she pretty much essentially adopted that one girl at the end and called her by her name, and essentially probably giving her that better life that she never had. We don't know what her future is in the future books, but we're just going on Deadhouse Gates right now. So I think she is a very tragic character, and I think this is one of Erikson's strongest characters. Whether you hate her or like her, I think it's one of his strongest characters.
Yeah, very quickly, my irritation with her just turned into like, man, how is Erikson so good at writing the characters? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, he did a fantastic job of immediately setting the tonal shift of Deadhouse Gates. Like we get to see, just even in the prologue, but like we were thrust into this world where there's a ton of people that are now in. I mean, this is like the culling of the nobility. These are people that have lived like in the upper echelons of society and are now like killing each other in these muddy concentration camp like scenarios because they've been turned to immediately just this like fight or flight, like defend themselves, like every man for themselves type of situation. And it seems like everybody, like people have mentioned in the chat, like I'm sure none of these people, like if they were looking at the situation from like, a bird's eye view, like they're like, I probably shouldn't have done that. They're all just in this together in a way, you know what I mean? Like Haboric and even Bowden and freaking what's her name? The Felisin sister. Like that there was, I mean, yes, that what she was doing to her sister was devastating, but if I'm not mistaken, she also, like, we don't get this for a very long time, sent Bowden to protect her sister, right? Like, wasn't that his whole purpose, essentially? Like, she knew she had to do this to her sister, but the very least she could do was give her this ex-Talon who was, like, a beast. Yeah, maybe he was a bit of a prick, but, like, and I think even, like, Felisin multiple times was like, why don't you just go away? And he like never said why, but it's because like he took on an assignment and the assignment was to protect Felisin because Tavor asked him to do that or sent him to do that. And like that gave me this like empathy towards Bowden that I didn't have the entire time up until that point. Like across their whole journey, I'm like, man, why is this dude still hanging around? Like he could just go away. And then he does go away and then he comes back. Like it was just like there was so much going on, and every time I thought I had made my mind up about a character or the way I felt about them or something, like boom, something else would happen and I'd be like, dang it, like I thought I knew how I felt about them. And I never hated Felisin either. I was irritated by her, but I think that was purposefully done, like, and well done. Like she's a child thrust into this ridiculous situation. She's not thinking about any consequences. She's like, if I can use drugs to help these people that are helping me, sure, I'll do it. If I can like use my body to help these people that are helping me, sure, I'll do it. Like she's not thinking about anything. She's just like operating on, I don't know, like the survival instinct, which I think everybody kind of is at this point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's
and no, go ahead.
I was just gonna last comment. It was just like it is a matter of patience when you read these books. It's Erikson's so intelligent enough to really you have to hold out into the end where these characters are going to land with you. I mean, you can't really, it's hard to make up your mind early on any of these characters. You have to wait until the end. Cause like Colin said, I didn't really understand his role and what I thought he was maybe like a like somebody sent from. I thought he was sent like by one of the gods or something to protect her, because I did kind of get the indication that she was going to be the new Shayak role. I kind of did predict that a little bit. I thought it wasn't going to be. I thought it was either going to be her, of course, or Aspapar or something. But I imagined more of her because she is in direct conflict with Lasine and, of course, Tavor, her sister. So.
And you can't even lay the blame on any single character for that whole situation, you know, not even Tavor, because too many things happen, too many decisions are made. But
she's got people over her too, so
yeah.
And
I
like
got a lot of comments.
like you're really just witnessing a lot of people just survive. I think that's what's so compelling about this series is like no one is like a major decision maker. All the POVs are just people trying to move against like gods and empires that are like infinitely larger than them, and like they cannot influence the outcome of it at all. Except when they try to decide to by unleashing the whirlwind or becoming the whirlwind.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. Let's get into that part soon. Let me just too many comments to get through real quick. The chain of dogs really felt like just more. Yeah, across the
Yeah, it
continent.
sure did.
Absolutely. Arin was crazy. Till book 4. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't think I've been this angry at the end of a book in a very long time.
Yeah, that was a visceral feeling. Like it's been a little while since I read this, because I read this when I was on vacation, so it was like the middle of August, and I was so mad sitting in this little, like, we had like a wall, like an indoor front porch that was like separated from the house, and that's where I would like read most of the time. And I was just sitting out there like, this cannot be happening. Like, this dude has gone through so much. How is this going to be the way that this ends?
The Felisin and Chain of Dogs storyline kind of mirrored each other, where both had lost so much of their humanity or whatever, but in the end they worked towards the next generation.
Yeah, very good.
Mm-hmm. R.I.P. Colin. Oh man. Oh, still surprised.
Yeah,
By
that came out of nowhere. I was like, wait, what? I had to read that over.
But Kevin and Gardens of the Moon is a weird first book because while it has a lot of what makes Malazan, it does not build a thematic narrative that the others do. Yeah.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, which is why I'm like, yeah, it's a epic prologue. Erikson writes a lot of duos, while Mappo and Akarian are not among my favorite. He always writes them so well. Okay. So like, obviously others to look forward to as well. I haven't done much grimdark, but Felisin's storyline is one of the darkest I've ever read. Tough to read, but so compelling. Absolutely.
Agree.
And she's a teenager. Part of Felisin's arc that hit me was when she named the orphan Felisin, as she had a chance at life than original Felisin had. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Rebecca, yeah. They're all traumatized. Headbreak too. I hate Bodden. I've heard people say they hate Bodden big time, and I've heard people say that they would lay all the blame on Bodden, and I disagree.
I also disagree.
I also agree, but I think they were all just they were all just trying to survive in a sense, but they all had the equal amounts of like irritation as well as like good moments as well too. So at least my take. Yeah.
I love Bodden. Not in the sense that I think he's a good person or like right at all, but I really latch onto the most toxic characters in books.
Oh yeah, this moment. See,
yep,
I
went right over my head.
I didn't remember my head too. Yeah, so good. Yeah. The culling of Malazan ability can be related to guys like Pormqual at the end of the Chain of Dogs who are corrupt and led to failures around the Empire. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I see that. Those flies scared the hell out of me. Yeah,
Oh my
they were
god.
scary,
Yeah,
terrifying.
that
Sorry, no empathy for Bodden. Oh, he blamed Felisin for wanting to stay. That was his reason for not taking her away from that place. Like, what the? Yeah.
Look, Bond's job was to keep
Yeah.
her alive, not take her anywhere.
Mm. Yeah, that is very divisive. Lasine is the one to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, like, you could, yeah, so many people to lay the blame on there.
I think one
How
of
about the ship scene? Oh, go ahead.
I think one of the oh man, I lost my train of thought. I had like two thoughts and they have both kind of evaporated. We'll talk about the Lacine one. I think it was interesting that because like Lacine is to me like the obvious overarching villain of the series. But even when we get to her ending scene with Calum, I was like, she seems almost reasonable.
that's kind of my take too. I was like, oh, there's definitely more to maybe Lacine than maybe we know. So it's definitely another character that maybe we'll find out if we still feel the same. I mean, she is of course set up to be kind of like the villain, but I don't think she is. I think she's also a pawn. That's kind of my take. I don't know.
Well, I think one of the things I'm looking forward to and what I kind of hope for from the rest of the series is like so much of like what the conflict we're dealing with right now is from things that happened 20, 200, 200,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think I'd really like to see a bit more of like what led Lacine to overthrow Calenbed. Because she says like it was for the good of the Empire, but why wasn't Calenbed the right choice for the Empire? So I kind of like to see if she was just being selfish and she just thought she was better, or if like there was some kind of catastrophe she was trying to avoid. I really hope one of the things I like about this book, especially, is like you really feel like the history of all these other races like seeping through into the conflict of the Malazan Empire. And I really just want Erikson to keep doubling down on that because I can't get enough of it.
I know as a somebody who studied archaeology, I definitely get his take of anthropology and his studies of, history and his love for history. You get that a lot with Mappo and Akarium as they're doing all these like ruins and going to all these places. We haven't even touched on what's his name is Ezekiel Pust or whatever.
Yeah,
So
You mean the best character?
Yeah. He's like the coupe of this book. Yeah,
the
he's
crap.
yeah.
And speaking of revelations, with Lasine and Cal in that scene where we learn that Dujek One Arm, his whole rebellion or detachment is a ruse.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that caught me. I'm
Yeah.
interested to see what goes on there.
We always get those like I think foreshadowing moments of probably future books. Definitely.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. I think Daniel kind of mentioned it. I don't remember the context or the person speaking, but up until this point, we are kind of led to believe that just the Empire was in a better place under Kellenvad's rule, but also like somebody at some point mentioned that like things were not actually quite as good as people remember them under Kellenvad's rule, and it might have even been Lasine saying that in the scene with Kalam. I'm not sure exactly, but there was, there was a million themes that we could touch on in this book, but one of the ones that stuck out to me too was just how little the general population knows or understands about what's really going on, and how blame gets probably misplaced a lot of the time, which makes sense. I mean, blaming the people at the top does make sense, and they do have a culpability in some of this, but like also like Chris was kind of touching on, we don't know. I mean, maybe Lasine this whole time is just under much greater forces than anybody can even comprehend, and everything gets shifted up to her, and she's the big baddie, which she is, but like is she under some kind of like is there some greater force here going on that wanted her in rule because she was easily manipulative? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of like shifting the blame and then also realizing that even that blame is probably misplaced and like leaving me kind of like wondering just what the heck is really going on here. Who's pulling the strings, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's something that kind of surprised me in this book compared to Gardens of the Moon is I felt like there was like way less like divine intervention. Like I know Shaik is sort of like a demigod character, and then like Kellanved, a Shadow Throne, is there at the end, but like we didn't have nearly as many like gods interfering with the conflict like we did in Gardens of the Moon. It was either
it really grounded this book for me. And I don't get me wrong, I love the magic. I love magic. I think Erikson does magic so well. It's not explained. He's not hardcoring the system like some authors do. I'm not going to mention them, but we get a lot of that mysticism, and I appreciate the mystery of the magic. And I'm kind of glad that the gods did step back a little bit in this book. I felt like the nature, especially with the Chain of Dogs, that all the scenes were raw because it was all human, all military focused, all about survival. This whole book is just this theme of just survival and desperation and getting through to the end. And I appreciated that. There was not a lot of God intervention here. And as much as I do appreciate supernatural forces in my fantasy, I'm glad it did take a step back in this book.
Yeah, I think in general, a good way to describe this book is just more grounded. Gardens of the Moon definitely has more of like a rule of cool, like what's the badass thing to do? And this book is more the painful choices.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember that part, but we did get a little bit of a deeper look into Warrens and Ascendancy, just like a little morsel of information that I thought was interesting, and I wanted a lot more, but I'm glad we got something, right? It was when they say a mage was not a priest, and magic was not divine intervention. Sorcery could be the ladder to ascendancy, a means to an end, but there was no point in worshiping the means. So gives you some insight as to what's how sorcery plays a role and how ascendancy is kind of different from what we might have thought.
I like the slowly revelation of explaining the Warrens. I think we do. I think I like to see it just slowly being revealed rather than all at once. And I appreciate the slow exposition of explaining those things. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Now, speaking of like Warrens and Ascendancy, one of my favorite parts of the book, other than the Chain of Dogs, is that little subplot with Felisin and Bodin and Hebert when they get on the ship with the soldiers and they get trapped in that warren. I thought that was all very interesting. And I mean, and then we get the severed or like the headless Tist Andy rowing the boat.
Yeah.
That was all really fascinating stuff. And again, I feel like that stuff. Oh yeah.
Yep.
I do feel like that's, Erikson's again opening it up just a little bit and like having us like have a peek forward of like some of the greater conflicts that are going to come up. Because he mentions there's a race of people that are like the Tist Andy, but distinctly different. Am I mistaken?
Mm.
In
Is that the Tista Edor or something? Or was that like an old... Okay.
Something like that. On the ships, right?
Yeah, they were on the ships, right? Like underneath.
Yeah, well, because like I don't remember if it was the Tist Edor who were the headless ones, or
I don't remember either.
Let's see if I had in my notes. I remember.
Okay. Yeah, like they were the ones that were like still alive and like were able to row this thing.
Yeah, and they were like all compiled on the deck and all that. Yeah,
so brutal, so cool.
Yeah. I love the whole ship scene. I again and then the going to the Wardens, who's the Corporal they make Gasper, and then Stormy, and
Yeah. Hi guys, just listening in. Hi Joanna.
Hey.
Chris, that's so cool. You
Hi,
studied
Joanna.
Archaeology. That would add to the experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet.
You can definitely see Erikson's anthropology, archaeology expertise in these books. It's amazing. I love when fantasy writers just put together this huge history, and you can tell it. It's every rock and every like landmass and peoples and all that. It's just all there. Does an amazing job.
And I think that's what makes Erikson different than like other fantasy authors I've read. Is he's not just like a history buff. He's an expert in cultures and civilizations.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes his books feel so much bigger and heavier. And like we're not getting a taste of something that's complex. It just is complex because he understands those things.
Even just like not little things, but like when they discover there's like remnants of an entire like old city, or like this used to be a coastal city, like that stuff just like feels lived in, you know, like they're like, oh, there was a whole, even with the whole like Icarium and Mappo thing, like which was a massive plot line.
Yeah,
I kind of, you know, like he just destroyed an entire city, and like Mappo's been hiding that from him like this entire time. That's what Mappo's job has been. And like there's this weirdly unspoken tension going on between them constantly. Like I think Icarium knows Mappo's there for a reason, but they never talk about it, type of thing. And you can tell they've just like been together for years and years and years and like know each other so well. It's a very strange thing, but it also adds again to like that whole like this world feels so lived in. Like it doesn't feel like a world that just is plopped in for this book series. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I love the dynamic of Mappo and Icarium's. I love their dynamic. I just kind of wish the book had a bit more of where they're going, because I think one of my criticisms of the book is I love Mappo and Icarium as characters. I do agree that like we don't really see where they're going, because once you go through this whole arc with them, they're kind of just right back where they started. But I do like that dynamic of like, because I feel like it's almost like a Memento plotline. If you guys have seen that movie, but Colin is trying to unlock his mysteries and or unlock his memories and try to unravel the mysteries of his past. And Mappo is doing everything he can to keep them away from him.
Yeah.
So I like that conflict. Yeah, I love Mappo.
Here's a question: who do you like more, Krupp or Pust?
Oh, easy Krupp.
I think
Pust. I mean, Pust is supposed to be just. I don't think you're supposed to really like him, but I did enjoy his characters. I do like when he puts these little mad people in here and they're a little crazy. And I think it was sort of like the comic relief, if you want to call it that, for this book, and it was kind of needed because everything is so flipping grim. So I know there are people that don't. Yeah, like I said, he's just another one of those characters where, yeah, you're not really like him, but in a way you do, because he just gave you a little bit of that. And I was trying to read too much into Pust, like all the things he was saying, because usually when you get one of these characters, they're actually saying a lot more than what it appears to be. But yeah, I've always liked those kind of characters. So
yeah, I definitely agree. I like Krupp more, but I love Pust. I think whereas there's something about Krupp that we haven't unraveled yet. I just get that sense. Pust, I feel like, is just mad. Like he's obviously got something he's working on, but he is just an absolute madman, and I love it. I also love where in the beginning he's telling Mappo and Icarium to look for spiders. And then, like the epilogue is like him coming out of that war and like the spider crawling off of him. He's like, I knew it.
I
Yeah,
definitely liked Kruppa better. Kruppa seemed to me like a more dapper version of Pust. Like, I think they both have a lot of power, a lot more power and knowledge than they ever let on to anybody. I feel like Kruppa walks around acting purposefully, like, obviously aloof and then Puss is just this like mad scientist, just like doing stuff and saying stuff and talking to himself, and nobody really understands what he's saying, but he does. And then later things come up, and they're like, maybe this dude's not as mad and crazy as we thought he was. I feel like people like with Kruppa, they might like write him off as just being like a weirdo, but then like people that like are more with it, they're like, that dude's up to something, like, and he knows he's up to something, and Puss just like everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Krupp feels like a performance. Like he's holding back on something, or like just trying to make you not suspect him of anything. Whereas Puss just has it on full display. Even when they're traveling through Tremor lore, he's just explaining how he wants to betray everyone.
yeah, that's the part I loved. I think I did like Krupp a little more, but Puss had me laughing out loud at times, like especially when he's like muttering these things and he doesn't think people can hear him. Everybody can hear him, and they're just like, oh, "Do we have a plan for this guy? Like, what's up?"
Yeah, it was great. And definitely needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Tis Lois.
His broom. He needs his broom.
Oh yeah, his broom. Oh, here, Lois. Okay.
Okay, so 2 other kind of sub races of the Tist. They were the corpses, but the actual severed heads were Tist Andy.
Tist Andy, I think.
You guys make anything out of the Jagged, Upsalar, and crew saw in the Azathoth at the very? Oh yes.
Like the fact that the past 2 books have been quoting that guy, and like Gothos is falling, I think is what the chapter headings reference. Because I noticed that because in Gardens of the Moon and Deadhouse Gates, like the little quotes at the beginning of the chapter, they would sometimes reference a book called Gothos' Folly. And then Gothos, I was like, yeah, no, it's that guy. I don't know why he's significant yet, but
yeah.
So that's Icarium's father, correct? That guy.
Yeah. Yes, he's Icarium's father, so I guess that's a significant thing. I kind of hope we see a bit more of Gothos. I do love that we're actually seeing the characters who've written these kind of histories or poems about.
Kind of how I felt like with book 1, we had Talk the Younger.
Mm-hmm.
That we actually meet.
Yeah.
Talk's
what was interesting about this scene when we see Icarium's dad was that he mentions, because Icarium doesn't, he lost his memories. Mappo thinks he thinks that things are a certain way with Icarium, but then we get Icarium's father who actually explains like, no, this is what actually happened. So because it wasn't Icarium who did all the whole destruction of the place or whatever, if you guys recall.
As I understood it, Icarium did destroy the city they were in, like with his like device thing, but Mappo was told that Icarium destroyed Mappo's hometown too. But that was actually the Jagu. As I understood it. Chat, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's how I read it.
Yeah, I remember something like that as well. So that was pretty interesting. And the other thing that I remember vividly from that scene is, remember when they were on the ship and then there's like some dragon and then a warren opens and it's just fire. Right? And then we see Icarium's dad in the place, and I think they hinted at like a warren in the fireplace that he was standing next to. So I'm like, okay, that's right. Big brain.
I did not pick up on that.
Good memory there. Wow.
Yeah,
that was a good detail.
So that was him, or came from there at least.
Going back to that thread a little bit, I'm very curious to learn more about how Ascendancy works, because Truth and I can't remember the Stormy and the corporal. I don't remember his name.
Gasper, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
They were on their way to becoming Ascendants just by being in the Warren, it seems like. Because they come out and they end up meeting up with Coltaine and the Chain of Dogs. And I think it's Gasker punches Coltaine. Or no, Coltaine punches Gasker.
Yeah.
Coltaine's hand breaks.
Yeah.
That was kind of interesting. And it also makes people a lot of questions.
That scene was hilarious. Like in my brain, I just picture Coltaine like punching him and going, "Ow."
Yeah. So I'm kind of excited to see more of Stormy and Truth and all of them, seeing where that plotline goes, because I think that's what's incredible is Erikson actually just has a ton going on. Like there's so much happening.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing he does, I think, really well. Is he'll take characters that you don't really think are really relevant, and they each have like everybody seems to get their moment or they get their part to play. He did that with the last book, even with the Bridge Burners, even some of the quieter members of the team that didn't have a lot to say. Then they show up later and have these like pivotal moments in their book, and it just amazes me that he can just keep all of this in track, and then two just presented to us. I mean, there's things, of course, I'll admit I'm confused, but maybe that's the point, because we're not to a part we're supposed to really know what's going on yet. So
yeah, so just because of the nature of, I don't want to say this book being popular in pop culture, but it's popular in fantasy booktube, this series, I'm aware that there's a series called Paths to Ascendancy that exists. So that's kind of always been in the back of my mind, because we get all these different hints of like different ways that different characters in these books so far have ascended or can ascend. But I'm unsure what that even means still. Like, I don't know what ascending does. Does that make you a god? Does that make you immortal? Does that make you a demigod? Does that make you, like, I don't understand. Like, are you just, like, in this pantheon of people that ascend? Because, like, at first it seemed to me like very few people ascended. And it was a very, like, I don't know, just you're in rare air if you've ascended. But now we get all these hints where, like, there's people that I don't even know about that have ascended, that like, is it this thing that isn't as weighty as I thought it was? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand how important it is, or like what exactly it means to ascend.
And that's what kind of like the whole Path of Hands plot line is about, right?
Yeah.
Because amidst all of this, we have all these divers and soul taken like racing to this point in the desert, because it acts as a warren that will turn them into ascendants. That's how I understood it. So I'm not really sure, because like it doesn't seem like something that's like given to people by the gods. It's like if you go somewhere and you follow a certain amount of steps, you become an ascendant. That's kind of how it seems.
Yeah, I'm still a little pretty unclear on that, but just like Colin said, it seems like there's a lot more reference to Ascendancy, and people kind of hinted at almost gaining that title. So it seems like it's something that might be easier than we thought to get
and
to.
Is it something that like anybody like Joe Schmo can like achieve? Is it just accessible to anybody who wants to do so? Or
it kind of seems like it's just going Super Saiyan a little bit. It just seems like you just become really powerful, but you're not immortal.
Right?
Yeah, not entirely immortal. Yeah,
but you're not easy to kill. But again, I think that's what's appealing, is like I really just want to keep reading the other 8 books and figure out more about it, because again, we get all these hints of how this stuff works, or we get this revelation that it's not as simple as it seems, and then that's it.
Yeah. It's like hard to guess I think that's the thing. It's like with other series, you can usually kind of make some pretty decent guesses of what's going to happen. I think with Malazan, I can't make a guess on what's going to happen with anybody.
Yeah, I do feel like there is one scene in this book that's infinitely more significant than it at first seems. Like I feel like it's a book that or a scene that's not going to become relevant until like book 9, and that's when Heberic and Felisin and Bodin are wandering the desert and they find that big jade pillar.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and they reference it as a finger, and then never brought up again.
Again. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like when Heboric touched it. That's when like everything started changing. Definitely for him, but like I guess like was it like a mixture of like his Odotaral dust and his warren? Like I don't know. He just like got hands. Like I don't really fully understand like what exactly happened, but like I don't even know if he did. Like he was kind of like acting weird after that. Like
yeah, it didn't seem like it was something he purposefully did. Like he touched it as a reaction. And I think that was a mix of like the god he worshipped. Like is it Fenrir, like the boar god or whatever? It was a mix of that and with the Otateral dust of the desert because he has like a green hand and a red hand.
Yep. Sweet.
All right. I love Mappo, cried. Yeah. Kari and Mappo's plotline in this book is self-contained to give us lots of background about them, the things to come in the future. That's what I assume as well. Yeah. I love Puss, and there's definitely more to what he's saying.
I figured, yeah. Usually when these mad people start talking, there's some hidden gems in there.
Yeah, so he's just okay. He has destroyed civilizations, but then he forgets that he didn't destroy Mappo's village. That was a lie. Yeah. More about that later. Good. What's up, man?
What up?
Got Stormy and Gessler right in this book. Yeah.
Only a little, but they were there.
Yeah.
Great.
Don't tell me that.
Oh.
Why
okay. Yikes.
Jesus.
Ascendant is mostly just a superpower buff. Yeah, see? Okay.
Yeah,
Godhood is much more difficult. Oh. Okay, so there's a difference between Ascendancy and Godhood. That's good to know.
There's levels to this.
Maybe that just skipped my mind. I'm not too
sure. You become a supervisor,
I remember
hated Malazan character.
Hated Pust.
Oh wow.
Most hated character? Are you sure about that?
Oh, he's fun. You're supposed to hate him, but at the same time, I needed a laugh, and he provided that.
He's like you hate him in like a hilarious kind of way,
Yeah.
In a series, still don't really know. Wow.
Read it again.
There you go.
Oh, Caleb, there you go. You're right.
Vindicated.
Good. Easy to figure out myself, though that might be because I've read a lot of things. Gods playing big roles. How it happens? No idea. Okay, well, which characters have we touched on the least?
Probably Fiddler, I would say.
We have touched on maybe 10% of the book, I feel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we could go on.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I would say Fiddler's group was probably the one.
Fiddler, Crocus, Absolar.
Yeah, the Fiddler, Crocus arc at all. I think of all of them, this was actually my least.
Really?
I was least interested in this arc. At least until the end when it started converging with other arcs.
They were slow in the beginning. Yeah, they were slow.
I love the first scene with Fiddler when he blows up that Soul Taken's head.
Yeah.
I feel like the book overall had like way less badass moments like that, but when they were there, they were very cool.
Yeah,
I agree. I'm still
books should
like,
explain it.
I think I kind of understand Soul Taken and Divers better now. I mean, we see a lot of divers.
Yeah.
But like, are divers one entity that can break apart into a lot of different entities? Like, are they controlled by one like mind?
Yeah, the way Sarav described it in the Discord is like it's one mind, but it's like a group of animals. So like
Okay.
there's that are packs of wolves or like swarms of rats.
Okay. And
like
then the soul taken is like break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for Fiddler, Crocus, and Absolar, that was definitely the least intriguing for me as well. I think, and then when Callum ditched to do his thing, I don't think I really was invested. Even at the end, where we find out that Fiddler is gonna go help the Malazans, the army or something. He's gonna go off to fight.
Yeah, but not back in Genabacchus, right? Like he's gonna go somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Yeah. And then remind me again what's gonna happen with Crocus and Absolar. They're going back to her.
Yeah, they're trying to get back to, was it Edo Khan? Is that where she's from?
It could. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
now that
now that's debatable if she is even gonna go there. I mean, she's with her father anyway. This section was odd because I was happy to see some familiar faces. I was like, oh, okay, people did carry over from book one. I thought, like I said, I thought it was all brand new people from the way everybody was talking about this book.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So no, the one things I do appreciate, and we didn't get a lot of, is Aspedar's conflict continues a little bit with the rope, whatever. I love that she still has that memory set. She's still she's there, she's present now, but she still has a lot of these old memories that still conform. And I do appreciate that did carry over. Like it didn't, like, that's, to me, was kind of cool. But yeah, this Crocus was just kind of there for me. He didn't really have a role in this storyline whatsoever, I felt like. But I'm a fan of Fiddler, so I mean, he tried to held the storyline for me a little bit, but because I think he has a compelling character to follow. But it just at this point it was a little slower for me.
It seemed to me like Crocus kind of had he kind of was one of those characters that had fulfilled their part already, but was still just kind of like along for the ride by the nature of geographically just being with them.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being a lot more attached to what Crocus was doing because he was on the page more a lot in Gardens of the Moon. But it kind of just seemed like what needed to be done via him had gotten done. And I don't know. I mean, that storyline, I think, was maybe not the least compelling, but less compelling just by nature of there being a lot more compelling things going on around the world. I was really intrigued. I've always been really intrigued by Kalam, though, in Quick Ben.
Mm-hmm.
That whole scene where I forget the guard that was following him the whole time and knew what he was doing, you know what I mean? That was very riveting stuff. And I think when he was on the ship, right, and then he he realized that his mind was being messed with, all of that was, I was in on that stuff. I was very intrigued on that plot line. And then he literally gets stabbed and thrown to the sharks, but it's just a total badass and just swims however long to get to the shore. And then there's that whole there was a lot, it felt like the beginning of Darujistan, when he was fighting through all the different people and these close combat, very intimate fighting scenes with him just to get through and survive. I thought all that stuff I was very interested in, more so than Fiddler and Absolar. I was interested in Kalam personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I get that. yeah, I felt like Kalam was like, well, I want to go do something interesting, so I'm going to separate from you guys and do this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I love Kalam's arc, and in Guardians of the Moon, you kind of get you see a little bit of just how competent he is with violence. And in this book, you just get it on full display. I mean, every scene he's in, especially in the back half of the book, someone's getting it.
Yeah.
His
interactions with Pearl were like really good. I like how he's just like ready to just like kill him. Like, just give me any reason to want to just like murder you.
Mm-hmm. And I love towards the end kind of his climax, fighting all the claws in the streets of Malaz City. Really thoroughly enjoyed that sequence.
There's some random moments like Duper's vision of that frozen mass of bodies.
Wasn't that one of the Warlock kids that was like showing him some horrific scene that happened?
Nither.
Yeah.
It's hard to recall.
Like that was a direct reference to. I mean, I don't know right yet, but like I read that scene, I was like, oh, that must be the memories of ice.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But
so here's a explanation on divers. Very powerful as the mind is able to split itself into multiple. So think of cell division, how a cell is able to duplicate. Okay. Huh.
I like it.
And here we go. Fiddler is going to join Tavor's army that is going to 7 cities to put down the rebellion.
That's what I thought. But I wasn't.
Yeah, I got that indication too from the very end there.
Yeah, that ending was I don't know what to make of it. It seemed so people are just like getting their wishes granted or something like that, you know? Like, okay, you get this, you get that, you get What'd you guys think of that?
I am getting the impression, and like again, I feel like the thing I'm most interested in is learning how Colin and Lacine's relationship deteriorated. At least I hope we get more of that. Because Colin as Shadow Throne just kind of seems like a psychopath. Like I don't know if that is ailment of godhood, but like he just seems intent on destruction almost. And he does kind of do like a genie thing where like you get your wish, but do you really? Because he charges Kalam and that one girl that followed them with taking care of all the souls.
Melina, yeah.
And we haven't even talked about Apt, the best familiar in the book.
Apt, yes.
Yeah. Apt and the little boy.
Yeah, the creepy little one-eyed child.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was interesting him being able to see, is it another dimension or something, and then they realize, oh, that's why the hounds don't never run straight, because there's like, you know, different dimension with like rocks and stuff in the way or whatever.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if like that was giving him a glimpse into, I don't know, Shadow Throne's Warren. Or maybe not. Or the hounds are for Hood, right? Like that's the magic. I don't know how to articulate it. Or are the hounds part of Shadow Thrones?
I think they're Shadow Thrones.
I think they're they're his.
Again, it makes
a little confusion there.
There's not a shockingly little amount of time talking about dogs in this book, so they showed up again. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, there's Gear. Poor Gear.
Yeah.
There was one thing I was reading through the Wikipedia, and there's one thing in this book that really irritated me that I forgot about until right now. That it's the only thing, like, of all the things that don't make sense, this just like felt out of place. But do you remember when the Trigal trade guild or whatever showed up randomly with like everything
yes. Yeah, like, that bothered me too. Yeah.
What was that? That felt like a
mention. Yeah.
I guess I thought about it. I forgot until I was just like reading through the Wikipedia, and I was like, oh yeah, that made no sense. Like in this dire situation,
So I guess
this. Like, I don't
sorry.
understand that part.
So
No,
I
go ahead.
guess Quick Ben has connections still with Kalam at least. I wasn't sure about how he got to the army, or why he would know, Dukier and Coltaine, and but I mean it. So I guess Quick Ben, sent that guy for those provisions or something. Is that what you're confused on, Colin? Because that's the part
Okay.
I didn't. That's the part I didn't really. I was like, oh, that's convenient. Here's some.
Yes, it felt
Yeah.
like a Deus Ex Machina type
Yeah,
of
yeah.
thing.
But I guess if
Like
Quick,
this.
yeah, I guess if Quick Ben has this like connection with what's going on over there, I guess that's probably why that
Okay.
happened. Why he was able to get those provisions over to both the army, and then of course over to the other group as well, Fiddler, I believe. Yeah.
I feel like, because I agree, like it's weird and it kind of comes out of nowhere, but I feel like it's kind of Erikson's attempt to directly connect Memories of Ice with the book. I don't know anything about Memories of Ice, but I have the feeling that it takes place simultaneously.
Okay.
Because there was one scene when Calum and Quick Ben are talking about, like, they're speaking telepathically through the little thing Ben gave him. Quick Ben mentions losing a lot of blood the day before, and I was just like, we'll probably learn about that in Memories of Ice. So I feel like we'll learn more about Quick Ben and this merchant guy in that.
Yeah, I think somebody mentions in the comments that there's more of the merchant. Daniel did.
Okay. Yeah, that was the only thing I remember being like, what the heck? Like, this just doesn't fit.
Yeah, I was the same way at
There you
first,
go.
and I with the little bit of Quick Ben interaction, I was like, all right, I'll get behind that,
Yeah.
But yeah, at first I was like, really?
All right, I missed some stuff here.
But they did
Um,
give the vial to like crush. It was supposed to go to Coltaine,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Diker ended up with it, right?
yeah,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that has to be significant.
and then it got crushed. So it seems like his soul was saved or captured.
Yeah, I don't know if that means like Diker has ascended, or wasn't it Coltaine that like adamantly refused it and insisted that Diker wear it because
Yeah.
he was like,
he threw it at
yeah, like history. He was like he needed history to be recorded of this event.
Right.
Coltaine was like he just, I don't know, was like a
Yeah,
martyr.
he didn't. You don't get many
knew
lines.
It was a futile effort, like he knew that what was happening. I feel like he was aware of what was happening being a result of like very incompetent leadership, although he agreed to do something and was going to do it. And he's like, because of what all this is, like all the things that have happened, he was insistent that Diker have somebody placing him in all the correct places to see everything that was happening so that it could all be recorded for future generations. Like, he knew he was going to die. I think he knew that he wasn't going to survive this, or even if he did, it was going to feel like a futile effort, but like he still didn't care. He's like, this all needs to be recorded. Like, that was like, I really respected that about Coltaine throughout the entirety of this.
Yeah, he was incredibly intuitive.
Yeah,
sure.
and it's very funny because everyone was pushing for Dukier to record. Like when they get to Arin, I forget who, but he approaches, you need to record this, you need to talk about this because we already have the nobles and the nobility already saying something else happened, that's contradictory to what's going on right now. You need to get this reported, and unfortunately it didn't, and tragedy struck. But so they're telling their own history of what actually happened there in the end. But it was, oh man, that was just tough.
He was on the brink of ascendancy. Was he not, Coltaine?
I don't know.
I think it was mentioned that he was getting close or something of the sort. But regardless, he was super intuitive, and if you didn't know that, just by the end where he lifted his head in time to catch that arrow was like, there was a lot more to him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because like
absolutely. Yeah.
Corbolo Dom was like shooting the crows or the ravens or whatever that were supposed to be like coming down to take Coltaine's soul. He was like killing them. Like I hated that. I hated that guy so much.
Corbolo Dom, you dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love Coltaine. I'm an absolute Coltaine stan.
Coltaine was probably just like pinned up there, like, sweet release, the ravens are coming.
It's so funny. It's so funny considering he's not even the POV of this book, and
yeah, incredible.
It's like Coltaine,
and half the time he's not even in the scene. It's just well, he's there, but he's not like directly with our POV. Usually Duke Gear's off to the side, observing, what he does as the historian. But I think it's just incredible to the fact that everyone is so, that was like the strongest character, and it's just the presence of him being there without having to say any lines or getting even into his head. It's crazy.
Caleb, you may be onto something here, because there's some trivia as well that Erikson originally wrote Memories of Ice first. The file was lost, deleted, so he went on to Deadhouse Gates. So maybe it is taking place simultaneously. Who knows?
I feel like with how far apart these books are, like physically in the world, like most of them, I feel are going to take place at least somewhat concurrently, because you have so many people doing different things in different places. And this book takes place over the course of like 8 months. So you can't think that Whiskey Jack and all of them are going to stand around for 8 months.
Okay.
I am kind of curious if Memories of Ice is concurrent with what's going on in Deadhouse, or if it's still like after the events of Deadhouse.
Yeah.
I really do feel like it's at least somewhat concurrent with Deadhouse Gates. I imagine it would like go through like timeline wise, like the whole length of Deadhouse Gates, and then like maybe a little bit further.
Maybe like half of it, because it's a chunker. So
isn't it?
Can you imagine losing a file that's this many pages?
I would give up. I would. I'd be like, you guys will never see the end of this because I'm not doing
it. This is Erikson's biggest strength, making us care about some characters just through the eyes of others.
Yes. Yeah. He did a really fantastic job with this character.
The same time as Deadhouse Gates, but ends slightly later. All right.
Oh man, get it all. It's a miracle. Did you guys feel like? Did you feel like there was almost like a racial component to Pormqual not helping Coltaine? Because if I remember correctly, Coltaine is from the Seven Cities area. I don't remember the name of the continent. But Pormqual and a lot of the others like are distinctly Malaz. You think Pormqual's like, I don't really care about what happens to the actual people who live here thing? Do you feel like that was a component to it? That's kind of what I read into it.
That's interesting. I hadn't even thought about it. My entire mindset was just that Pormqual was a wussy that didn't know how to like lead in wartime.
I feel like maybe he was like, I don't really have to care what happens to Seven Cities people. And
that's interesting.
Because they actually showed up.
I didn't think about that either. That's
it's good. That's good.
That is interesting.
Because I think it kind of displays like the kind of apathy the Malaz Empire has towards its subject. It's like conquering is just about conquering. It's not really about doing anything else.
You might be onto something, according to Bob.
Well, first, there was tension in terms of Coltaine being Seven Cities native. Okay.
Yeah. So
There you
Huh.
go.
Maybe that, like, I mean, obviously there's other reasons why Diker, because he was there the entire chain of dogs march, but maybe that's also why Diker was so livid with Pormfall at the end, because he's just like, how could you possibly be doubting this dude's allegiances at this point? Like, if you could even
Yeah.
understand a sliver of what we and this man have brought us through, you would not be treating this like this.
Mm-hmm. Shadow, your comment about the nobility in the chain of dogs.
I was just thinking about that. My God.
Every single step, Nepatara, is that his name? Every time he showed up, I was like, just kill this guy.
Yeah, I know. I was the same way with every one of the nobles. It was like, oh my god, just put these guys in the like chain or something.
Yeah, look, you're not
Yeah.
going to get in trouble if no one arrives to complain about it.
Yeah, and they turned out to be very dangerous at the end too.
Mm-hmm.
Where are my slaves?
Yeah, it's and that's another funny thing about them is like they, at first you kind of write them off. They're these silly noblemen, and they're like, "Where are my slaves? Who's gonna?" I like the one comment where it's like, "Who's gonna wipe my ass?" I forget who made the comment. It's like, um, but I in the end, it's just they're the ones who like really caused a lot of problems for the chain, and it just goes to show, it's just that power and what you can do with that.
Mm-hmm. And they end up getting everyone else killed after they
Yeah.
arrive at Aaron. So
Yep.
I think
Mhm.
Coltaine's death was like so incredibly heartbreaking and hard to read. Dooku's death made me mad.
Did you? And I can feel like the tension of like even the soldiers like on the wall, and it's like they wanted to go down and help them. I think,
Mhm.
they were wanting to just be there, help them out and do something. They felt. I don't think everybody was just like, oh, have fun, bye, kind of thing. I think everybody was like just really tense and like, but because of orders, they couldn't leave their posts.
Yeah, everyone kind of sensed the wrongness.
Yeah, everybody really, you can tell the mood and all that. Just brilliant. But
brilliant.
yeah, unfortunate, but brilliant.
So Coltaine's from Quantali.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm excited to see more of. Yeah, I'm excited to see more of Coltaine. I know from that epilogue, I mean, we know he's going to be reincarnated, so
Mhm.
that'll be interesting.
I love how like there were like 3 epilogues to the book.
Yeah. I had to read the epilogue actually twice. I had to kind of get a nice sense of what was going on, just to one for the enjoyment, and then second just to see what I can catch, like foreshadowing wise and all that.
Yeah, me too. I read it twice. It was, yeah.
I also found there to be this interesting. So, like, I'm usually not a big fan of this. It happens in fantasy by the nature of like magic more than in any other genre. But even just like knowing or thinking that somebody might not actually be dead usually cheapens the death experience emotionally for me. But that did not happen in this book. Like, Coltaine's death and Diker's death both still really hurt, even though I now know that they both aren't really, like, their souls aren't gone. Like, usually that cheapens the experience a bit for me. And it's like, it feels like a get out of jail free card, but somehow Erikson did it in a way that didn't feel like that for me personally.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I feel like I feel like we don't necessarily understand the full context of what reincarnation looks like yet. Because we've seen Tattersail be reincarnated from Guardians of the Moon, but I don't entirely have the full context of it. Like, does the child know she is Tattersail, or is Tattersail's morals imbued into her? Like, we haven't really seen how that plays out yet. So I'm wondering what the essence of souls is in this world.
Yeah.
Lots of mystery. Yeah.
Us getting his wife in the epilogue. Yeah.
Oh, pust.
One thing that's not a deterrent from the books, but also something to keep in mind, is that novels of the Malazan Empire exist, and some plot lines, characters appear there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm still unsure if I'm gonna do that on a reread or some of them this read through, but I definitely want to get to them. I want to get to them
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
The,
I feel
which ones? Which ones? The
The Esselmont books and
the
the
Ascendancy
other
books.
novels.
Did we discuss that?
Yeah.
Did we discuss that we were going to intermingle those, or are we just reading the main 10?
I'm still up in the air about that. I'm not too sure. Still thinking. We'll see.
I'm right because like part of what makes the series so challenging, but part of what makes it so interesting to read is how vague and mysterious everything is. Like I was talking to Dom the other day on Discord about how like he's in like book 9 and still learning stuff and still going like, what the hell is going on? So I think it makes it challenging, but I like that element of it. I like the fact that like I don't really put together what's happening in the book until halfway through. And I
Yeah.
worry if I read the other novels with it, that might take away some of that like heavy atmosphere.
Yeah, I like the mystery. I like having the questions at the end in a way too. So it keeps
And
you
as
in.
much as I love Malazan, I also enjoy reading other things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
For sure. It's funny because
I've actually go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say I finished Deadhouse at the very end of September, and then I'm thinking, oh man, all of my October reads for the spooky season are either horror or dark fantasy, and I'm just like, I need to reread Legends and Lattes or something, before I get into this, because it's all dark fantasy and horror for October, and I'm like, and I just came off of Malazan, and then late in October I'm going to get into Memories of Ice, and it's just like, man, I got to get some cheer in my thing. Maybe I'll read a Pratchett book or something.
Well, I'm also just cheerful at how much I'm actually accomplishing. In September, I only read 2.5 books, half of the book being Deadhouse Gates. And I've read 3 books already this month. I'm like, is this what it's like? Is this what it's like to not be Malazan?
Yeah, I will probably have to slow down a lot of my plans because of Malazan. Because yeah, it's dense, and I want to take my time with it. I want to get to know it well, and I might just sprinkle in some like Pratchett or something, something uplifting on the side. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
I honestly feel like I'm gonna start Memories of Ice like right after this chat, because I feel like I'm really gonna need the 2 months to just like read every scene and just kind of like soak it up. I feel like one of the things I probably did to myself was like I tried to rush reading this book, and I tried to just sit down and like get through it, and I think that might have worsened my experience a little bit, especially with like the Chain of Dogs arc. I really feel like just absorbing that would have made it a lot more impactful.
I had the opposite.
Colin, you started in Memories, didn't you?
I haven't started Memories yet.
Oh, okay. I thought you started Memories. Okay.
I've been purposely waiting because I didn't want that.
Ones.
No, I just didn't want the knowledge of what was going on in Memories of Ice at all to impact. Like,
Gotcha.
It's really fun for everybody here to be in the same knowledge phase. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it kind of, it's impossible to, like, as much as people that have done, like these chats that have read the whole series or whatever, like, you just can't say things that you want to say. Or you can't, I mean, it's just really hard to, like, not give away any emotional reaction if somebody asks about something that you know about already. So, like, I was like, I'm not in any rush to fly through this. Although, like, I had the opposite experience as Caleb, just because of the nature of being on vacation. Like, I flew through this book because I could not put it down, and I think I missed a lot of stuff because of that. But I also was just so engrossed with like what was going on that I think I just the main plot lines stuck with me, but like the minute details, some of the things that went on, like I either just forgot or just they didn't resonate because I was reading so quickly. You know what I mean?
Well, to your credit, you've been writing for this chat since like mid-August, so
Yeah, I was gonna
you
say.
finished this book quick.
Yeah,
like
finished
too
it quick.
much time.
I was like, I was like, when we got on here, I was like, man, I hope Colin took notes or just has a good memory because it's been a while for him. And
Wikipedia helps.
yeah,
Yeah, that was the
So
first
I've heard this a lot. At least
Nice.
read Night of Knives
So
after
this is the
midnight time.
first
A lot of
one.
people
This
have been
is
saying that.
That's
the first one out of the main
Ascendancy,
five.
right?
Yeah.
When we get to there, maybe we can discuss that.
Yeah, what, like June next year?
Yeah, June. Yeah, 3 books by then.
It's up to you guys. Good takeaway from the flow. I did not read them and have not felt that I missed out crazy parts. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Murphy Napier sprinkles in Pratchett as well. That's good.
Yeah.
Man, I've been meaning to get back to Discworld. I know you too, right, Colin? Probably.
Oh yeah, we kind of like started off at the same time, like near when we started our channels. We read the first couple, right? I've only read the first 2.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Oh, and more. But anyways,
Are you guys reading the publication route, or are you going just like in a series? Like I was thinking of starting with Guard Stars, but
I'm doing publication. So
I'm doing
Decided.
publication as well, but I don't think it matters. It matters to my brain. That's
there
it.
you go.
What have we not touched on? The Whirlwind? Did we want to get to that? Who wants to talk about the Whirlwind era?
Oh, where do we even begin? I guess we can kind of start with like the beginning of that, which is Calem's arc. I think the thing that was kind of surprising to me was how Calem just kind of decided he was going to try and assassinate Lysine and overthrow the Malazan Empire, which at first seemed weird to me, but I think it kind of shows like because Calem's an old guard, I guess. So he has this like deep-seated resentment for Lysine. So like the moment he saw the opportunity, like, oh, I could ruin Lysine's whole life and maybe kill her, he just took it. So because he's in what's the exact context? They're in one of the cities, and a merchant tells him that he has this book that needs to be delivered to Shaik to start the Whirlwind. And Calem's just like, yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
Am I mixing that up at all? Because that's kind of how it felt.
No, I think that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
Talk about a jarring moment with the Shaik and the book. Oh man.
Yeah.
I was honestly, and I was initially just shocked that, and I think I actually laughed a little bit that Shayak opens the book and
yeah.
And then I think I actually kind of chuckled. I was like, "Oh, Erikson." But yeah,
I got to read that twice.
And it was like, okay, I know there's going to be more to it than just her just like, plopping over dead. But yeah, it was just like,
yeah.
I think even like Fiddler is surprised by Calem's decision because Calem comes back and is like, "Hey, I've got this book. It's going to cause the Whirlwind, which is basically the apocalypse. I'm going to go do that." And Fiddler's like, okay.
yeah.
And then Shaik Shaik opens the book, gets got immediately. And then the Whirlwind's still activates because the Whirlwind is like it's a whirlwind that's kind of surrounding the Raraku desert. Is that how it was? Like it was just like a ring outlining.
That's how I pictured it. I pictured it a ring, like but then it was also like described as a column too, and I think maybe just like a ring cylinder kind of thing. I don't know. That's how I envisioned it.
That's how I pictured it too. Surah brought up a good point too, that I think made a lot more sense for Kalam's story arc is that he was a Seven Cities native, and like, so
Yeah,
he's
right.
like seeing what's going on to his city, and he's like, nah, bro, like this is not cool at all. One thing I wasn't entirely sure of that you guys maybe read, or I don't know if it was even revealed, is the Shaik a person, or is it I don't know how to put it, like, is it, can anybody become the Shaik? Like, is it like a king or a queen type of thing, or is Shaik a person?
I think it was a title,
Read
something
and
of the sort.
A title, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Read and
I,
find
it's
out.
kind of hard to articulate because I
Read,
feel
read and find out.
Read and find out.
read and find out. Is that what they say?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Oh,
I think what we're learning is just that it's a patience thing. We don't get our answers all the way we want them.
Shake is a mantle.
Mantle. Okay.
Yeah.
Because like I felt like it was obviously related to the book because whenever Felisin opened the book, she was like completely different. I felt
That's true.
Yeah. It's
so
and I think it was weird because sorry, Colin or Callum, but Colin. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
No,
I don't necessarily think it's like a possession thing, but like whatever happens with the book, like they're way more aware of something. Because
well, each had a different experience too, opening the book too. Like when
Dan,
she had hey Dan, he when she passed around the book, you know, you open the book, I want to, you know, and everybody had like just kind of like a different aspect, different experience, I think.
So I don't know if the book gave them visions
Yeah.
or because like Felisin, I think that's where Felisin's arc really came together for me. Is like she became a lot more purposeful. I felt, whereas Felisin, because like I had a hard time with Felisin, but where she came, but she started ending her kind of like reactionary phase to everything, just being mad at everyone. To like she's suddenly aware of like a purpose that she needs to accomplish.
Yeah.
so much I'll read and find out in Deadhouse Gates. Yeah.
Just read.
I
mean, should we just read right now?
I want to say something. This is a very like, it feels extremely pivotal in the overall plot of things, and I think, you know, people that are knowledgeable of how pivotal events are see the whirlwind coming and they're like, oh crap, everything we've been dealing with is very minuscule now because this is actually happening. Like that's the kind of, I don't know if it's like a sense of impending doom, but some of the characters we see that saw the whirlwind finally coming, where it just seemed like they were like, oh crap, like stop what we're doing. We are quibbling over tiny things now. This is massively important. It's actually going down. Like that's kind of the vibe I got,
which
from I think actually taking place.
Which I think earlier in the book they described the whirlwind as like an apocalyptic event.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's even mentioned in Gardens of the Moon. I remember a couple of times too. So yeah, it's definitely a huge deal, and that's why I think I was just like, well, initially shocked, like when they just like, because I thought that was her, that was the original Shaik. I thought that when she just drops dead, I'm like, okay.
Which I think maybe that's probably why like the whirlwind feels to me right now like more of a backdrop, like not the most crucial part of the book, is because it kind of comes to a head with Felisin become the new Shaik, and it's almost anticlimactic because that's it. I mean, that whole arc feels like the prologue to the rest of this part of the series. which maybe is probably a critique I have of this book in general, is I have read 2 prologues to Malazan now. I'd really like the plot to start.
Okay, so Whirlwind God. Okay, doesn't fully enslave Felisin. They coexist. Is there anything we haven't touched on? Anything else? We're coming up on 2 hours.
It's frankly a whole hour less than I thought this was going to be. So
now that we had discussion, to your initial thoughts of like characters and the overall story, did it change from what you said in the beginning of our chat? That'd be my only question to you guys.
No, Chain of Dogs is still
yeah. Same. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there wasn't any aspects that I wasn't really interested in. There were some that I was interested less in than others, and more. But I think all of it felt important. Like none of the plot lines, whether my interest level in them was high or low, felt like they were just there for like fodder. Like they all felt like they were propelling something forward. I'm not entirely sure what yet, but they all felt to be like important little side missions. You know,
absolutely. I definitely don't feel like it. I don't know about when you guys read A Song of Ice and Fire, or if you have yet, but I always wanted to skip the Bran chapters. I hate reading Bran. But I never really felt like that. Even with the Felisin chapters, I was like, here she is again. But like, I wanted to read because what was happening was interesting. So
and that's the thing with this book is I couldn't feel like I could catch my breath or like take my ease on it. I feel like I had to be intent on everything that was happening, even the things that, like Colin said, there were things that I was just a little interested less in, but I felt like everything was important. Everything was like, if you blink and you miss it, you like lost like an entire plot line of something. So I felt like I always had to be intent in it. And that's what made me feel invested in each of the plot lines, even the ones I was least interested in. They still became interesting in some shape or form because there was always something important going on.
Yeah. For me, this was slower, definitely a lot slower than Guardians of the Moon because of the emotional stuff. You know, I didn't want to. There were times I didn't want to keep reading, but then I was like, oh, maybe I should keep reading so that things can change and I can kind of feel better about things or something. You know, but I didn't have trouble. The only trouble I had was the battle scenes, and I had to, after watching the videos, I reread it. It really helped a lot. Like I said, those videos really helped. But other than that, it was just emotionally draining, and I'm glad I got through it. I enjoyed it, but it has definitely rekindled my urge to get back to writing because that has been my therapy. That's like catharsis for me. So, you know, bringing up feelings like that makes me want to get back to that.
And I'm glad you brought up the writing, Usman, because when I read Guardians of the Moon, whatever years ago, I do actually credit just that one book of being a influence to my writing as well too. And I've talked a little bit with Kalam about that because Caleb, sorry, I got Kalam from the book and Caleb and Colin, and I'm getting mixed up. And
call me Kalam. It's not an insult.
And I only had one cup of coffee, so but yeah, I talked with Caleb a little bit about this in my writing, and I think he definitely senses the my inspiration to
oh, absolutely,
yeah, gardens and all that, at least for gardens. But
yeah, I pretty much agree. Just like the book was exhausting, and I think probably where I shot myself in the foot with it was like I just tried to read it in big batches. So I was weekend reading it, so I was dedicating like 3 or 4 hours a day trying to read this book, and I think that made it more exhausting than it could have been, even though it's already inherently an exhausting book. So I think for Memories of Ice, I'm really going to try and just spread it out more, and if I can just read like 20 or 30 pages a day, maybe 40,
which is one chapter.
One chapter. Maybe a third of a chapter. Because like I want to savor it. Like it is so good. And Chris, you're right. Like everything matters so much. And if you miss it, like you miss it. So I really want to make sure that I keep reading slowly and I keep soaking up the content of the series. Because A, it's really good, and B, I feel like it's all gonna pay off. You can definitely feel the kind of seeds Erikson is planting, and we don't see where it's growing yet, but I feel like it's all growing together, and I'm really excited to see how it can, pay off.
Yeah.
So, Guardians of the Moon and Deadhouse Gates can be seen as prologues.
I agree. I think they
Memories-wise.
both felt like setups to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just two different groups of people. So
Memories-wise is commonly considered the first real Malazan book.
okay.
Now we're getting into it, guys.
Yeah, now we're getting into it.
Yeah. So chapter one, guys, of Malazan.
Yeah.
That's one big prologue.
Yeah, Daniel, that's what I've heard from other people who are that far in the series. Like, yeah, we still don't know. So, and then I've heard from like Daniel Green and like everyone else who's like read the Crippled Grod. They're like, it all came together.
Memories Vice chapters are bigger on average. Pretty much all Malazan books have the same number of chapters.
So yeah, do you feel like you get accomplished when you read one chapter a day or something like that?
Right?
I mean, it's really not. I'm telling you guys, I've read entire books shorter than chapters of Malazan.
How do you feel about like everybody's plot line being put together in one chapter? Do you like that, or do you like the concept of maybe like if we just focused on one character per chapter? But the chapters are so big that I'm okay with them keep flipping to each character. But
I honestly kind of love it because A, it gives me like a clear stopping point where I'm like, okay, I don't have to read a 90-page chapter today. There's a thumb
just on Mappo or or Fiddler or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I feel like it gives me a clear stopping point. I'm like, okay, I read through this section, I can go. But also it has a kind of cinematic quality to it. Right, because we are jumping between different perspectives, like it keeps me a little more engaged reading as well. Whereas, like particularly on like the first battle in the Chain of Dogs, I think that was entirely Duger's perspective. That was exhausting because that was like an hour and a half long chapter of just Duger, just in this battle, and that was a lot.
Yeah, I think it works well the way it is. Because everybody how dense the chapters are and everything.
And especially with the different groups, and this is what's going on with each of these groups during this time period in this chapter.
Yeah.
And part of the things I really don't like about A Song of Ice and Fire is trying to like line up mentally where all the chapters go together, because
time-wise, chronologically,
sometimes a chapter will be at the same time of a chapter and then 3 months later. So this one, I feel like it's easier to read. It's like everything is happening chronologically.
Erikson's style really shines later on, where multiple POVs are partaking in the same battle in the same chapter.
That would be really cool to see.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very interesting like juxtaposition to me also being in the middle of Realm of the Outerlings, almost dead set in the middle of Realm of the Outerlings.
Yeah, I was like, you're only halfway through.
Very different. I just finished book 9 out of 16, and it's a very different type of reading experience. Obviously, anything related to the main character in Realm of the Outerlings is first person. Not only is it not following one person, but it's first person. So it's almost like a little bit of a unreliable narrator type of thing, because we only know what he knows and what he thinks might not be right type of thing. And then, switching back to Malazan is like, whoa, I'm getting everything. Like we're doing like continental shifts here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited to read Worldbuilding at some point, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do it and Malazan at the same time. I don't have the strength you do, Colin.
Yeah. I did Hob like years ago. I do want to revisit her because it was years ago, but it's probably gonna be pushed to like 2025, I think, when I reread Hob.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've covered a fair amount here, and just coming past 2 hours. So, if there's nothing else, anybody, I think we've covered pretty much everything. So,
Touched all the major stuff, yeah.
yeah, it's been fun. Very much looking forward to Memories of Ice. So,
We want to discuss how
Yeah.
we're gonna go about this.
Do
We
we
want to do that off stream.
vaguely 2
Yeah.
months from today?
Somewhere,
we can discuss
sometime in December, probably.
Well, do we want to try to like pick a halfway point and discuss half of it, and then discuss another half, or do we want to just discuss the entire thing?
It's tough.
What do you guys
think-
recommend in the chat? Because I feel like there's going to be, I feel like Caleb said, I feel like we could have gone another hour today, and I think these books just continually get longer.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
my paperback, this paperback size is like almost 800 pages.
Okay. See, my brain is saying talk about the whole book, finish the book,
Okay.
but
Now, Chris, also,
I mean, who knows?
your copy of Deadhouse Gates.
What's that?
Bring up your copy of Deadhouse Gates too. Like, let's get a side-by-side comparison.
There we go.
Okay, well, so it looks a little thicker.
It's about 200 more, because I think Deadhouse Gates almost literally stops at page 600, and Memories of Ice is like 775, 780, I think.
So when Kindle, it said Deadhouse Gates is an 850-page book.
Okay,
So,
maybe that's including the some of the glossary and all that too. I looked at the last page in Memories of Ice, at least in this book. But.
Here we go. So Surov's the man to talk to. So we could just talk to him about it in the Discord. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll talk to him. We'll decide the best course of action.
I like Colin's idea, but at the same time, I feel like it might be kind of hard to stop midway. But yeah, but we can look at it.
But
maybe pick
play it by ear.
Pick a stopping point, like one of the books, because they do separate them by book in the actual book, the full book, book.
Mm-hmm.
But
so yeah, we'll discuss that. But anyways,
yeah,
why don't we just end things here? This has been a great chat. It's been very insightful, and man, I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'm really looking forward to the third book.
Yeah.
So
thanks to everybody in the chat for helping out.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Yeah, and helping out in the chat. It's been a lot of fun. I'll link all your guys' channels below and the Discord as well. So yeah, thanks everybody, and we will see you next time in the next chat.
Thanks for hosting, Usman.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
All good. See ya.